In this video, I'll give you my final picks for UFC St. Louis. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Real quick, if you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That is a full card breakdown. We talk about each one of these fights. This is going to be for DraftKings strategy, lineup construction, and I have some free money for you, so make sure you watch until the end. Now, we're recording this before weigh-ins and things like that, just because logistically, that's the way it's going to shake out. But I think everybody will make weight, or at least we're hopeful for it. And I think it's going to be a great fight card. I think we have a lot of finishes on our hands. Even the decisions look like they're going to be competitive fights where guys are going to go to war. We're going to get into all of that right now. We'll start with the value plays. These are plays at 8,000 and below, underdogs for your lineup. And we won't go as deep today as we typically do with these value plays because there's so many of them. So we've got 13 fights, meaning we have 13 underdogs. You can make a case for about 7 of them being in your player pool this week. JJ Aldrich will be the first underdog that I will tell you to not put in your player pool this week. I do think that she wins the fight, but even if she does, she's only broken 100 DraftKings points once in her entire UFC run. Not somebody you want in your lineups at all. Now you're going to hit this range where you have fighters that you should consider, but just to go over the other ones that I think you should completely X out of your player pools this week when you're using your lineup optimizers, things like that. After Aldrich, you can make a case for almost anybody in this entire range, all the way from Tecia Pennington down to Waldo Cortes-Acosta, but below that, like Alex Caceres, Night Train Gooden, Atomic Alonzo Menifield, Diego Ferreira. These are fighters that you X out of your player pool entirely. So no Ferreira, no Menifield, no Gooden, no Caceres, no Aldrich. Everybody else is fair game. Now again, this will be more so if you're running 150 lineups. There are a few that stand out to me when it comes to smaller contests or your single entry contests, and I'll tell you who they are now. Rodrigo Nascimento, of course, being in the main event, giving you that late hammer, being the better grappler in his matchup. If he does win, it's because he's getting takedowns. It's probably because he gets a submission. If he wins, it's going to be inside the distance. There's a high scoring ceiling for him this week. And if you look at his DraftKings scores in his UFC fights, he hasn't done that well. 66 points, 59, 85, 95, 100 points. He's going to have his best fantasy scoring fight of his UFC run so far this week to make it work for him, but I feel like he's in the environment and has the opponent where he can make that happen. Chase Hooper is interesting. I don't like Chase Hooper to win this fight. I like Viacheslav Borshchev to win. I like Viacheslav Borshchev for your lineups as well, but if you're playing single entry, you can get some good leverage over Borshchev playing Chase Hooper. And if he wins, it's because he's getting takedowns, and he's going to have to get multiple takedowns here. So this is going to be like a Felipe Colares kind of performance, or even against Steven Peterson if he would have went on to win that one and maybe finish it in the 3rd round. I don't see Chase Hooper winning this fight without securing about 4 or 5 takedowns. So if you feel like he's going to win, you want to put him in your lineups and you're chasing those 4 or 5 takedowns, he can probably get there for you. I prefer the other side, but Chase Hooper does have that ceiling. I feel similarly to Nursulton Ruziboev. If he wins, it's in the 1st round. He has the size, he has the power, he has the speed to win this fight right away in the first couple of exchanges. But I feel similarly to how I feel about Chase Hooper, where I know that he has that scoring upside, but I don't think that he's going to win. But we talk about it all the time. DraftKings isn't about playing who you think is going to win. It's about who can score you the points. Joaquin Buckley is going to be popular. He's always a popular play. When he's an underdog, when he's a favorite, it doesn't matter. People want to plug Buckley into their lineup. So you're going to get good leverage if you decide to play Ruziboev this week. If you're running multiple lineups, I suggest you be overweight to the field when it comes to Ruziboev. Even then, if you wanted to put him in your single entry contests, I think that makes sense as well. He's the preferred side from a DraftKings perspective if you are going to attack that fight this week. Probably the sneakiest guy in this range would be Billy Goff. He's got that early upside. He wins most of his fights by knockout in the 1st or 2nd round. Trey Waters is very tough. He's going to be hard to reach as well, being much taller, much longer. But that also means that if Billy Goff does land, it's probably a big shot because he's trying so hard to crash that pocket, close that distance on the taller guy. Trey Waters might hit us with some tall guy defense. And if that's the case, Billy Goff probably wins early. Last time out, he scored 117 points against Kinoshita. And out of all of the viable underdogs, in my opinion, I think he comes in at the lowest ownership. Like, for example, I think he's going to come in lower owned than Charles Johnson, who is going to win his fight. But we've seen Charles Johnson now. He's averaging 78 points in decision wins in the UFC. So it's going to be hard for him to be able to get that high scoring ceiling that you're looking for. I think Billy Goff has a much higher chance of reaching that scoring ceiling. Tougher matchup, of course, but he's going to come in way lower owned. So don't sleep on Billy Goff. Put him in your player pool. Be overweight to the field. I think that Nascimento, Hooper, Ruziboev, Goff, all solid. Terrance McKinney, I believe, has been optimal each and every time he's gone out there, whether he's won the fight or he's lost the fight. Most of his fights in the UFC have ended in the 1st round, and the 2 that didn't, that went into the 2nd round that he lost, of course. The other guy ended up scoring very well. Sadikov was able to get a takedown, get a submission. We saw Bonfim get a takedown in that fight, get a knockdown in that fight, score north of 100 DraftKings points, even with the second round finish. So you're always going to want to attack the Terrance McKinney fights. Terrance McKinney is somebody that you always want access to if you're running multiple lineups. I prefer the other side of this matchup because you can't trust Terrance McKinney ever, but he's somebody that can always show up on that optimal lineup. Now, for me, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, like we talked about in the video from earlier in the week, if you haven't, again, it's going to be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Go back and watch it. For me, Salsa Boy is like breakfast for dinner. You don't do it all the time, but when you decide to, it hits. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you haven't been playing a whole lot of Salsa Boy throughout his UFC run, you're probably in a good spot. However, if you did play him against Rębecki, you got him at pretty low ownership. You paid a pretty penny for him, but he came up with 106 DraftKings points. And now you have a situation where he's going to be super low owned. Robelis Despaigne probably coming in at over 60% ownership in most of your contests, maybe even higher than that if you're running single entry or in a smaller field. And rightfully so. If he wins, it's probably going to be in the first minute of the first round. He's going to get the 90 points for the first round finish. He's going to get another 10 points for the knockdown. He'll get another 25 for the quick win, meaning it's in under 60 seconds. But I'm telling you now, if that doesn't happen and Waldo Cortes-Acosta ends up knocking this guy out, he breaks the slate and there is a 100% chance, there's a guarantee, as Charles Barkley would say, that Waldo Cortes-Acosta shows up on the optimal lineup with a knockout win. So just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. And if you're running multiple lineups, you put them in 20% of what you've got going on, you're going to be overweight. And that's really it for the value plays. So there's a lot of underdogs that are very viable on this card, but they're not too many from a DraftKings perspective. So I'd keep the player pool a bit tighter this week, even though there's 13 fights. Those are the value plays. Now we can get into building some lineups. But before we do, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. Let me know which underdogs you like this week. Now let's get into building a cash game lineup for you this week. So obviously with these heavyweights in the main event, we're not going to stack the main event. It's probably not going to run all that long, and we don't want to stack any other fight on here. So we're going to look for 5 winners, maybe 6 if we can. So let's take a look at who we want our punt play to be. Now, when we were talking about your value plays before, we're talking about viable underdogs who can win, reach that scoring ceiling. When it comes to your cash games, like your 50-50s, your head-to-heads, your double-ups, where you're looking for scoring floor, that's when you're going to probably play one of these bottom 4 guys who you wouldn't consider for your tournaments. And I think that Diego Ferreira down at 6,800 is a very interesting punt option this week. He's suffered some knockout losses recently, none in the first round, so he's still scoring 15 there, 26 there, 32 in a decision loss. He's a decent grappler as well, so there's a good chance that he might get a takedown here. If he does get taken down, he can get you the reversals. Each of those are 5 points. Down at 6,800, he just stands out as somebody who, if he loses and you only get 10, 15, 20 points from him, it feels fine, because you look at Menifield, he probably gets knocked out in this matchup. Jared Gooden is an interesting punt play option because he probably loses, but I don't think it's going to be inside the distance. We've seen him score 29, 35, 31, even 47 in a decision loss. So Jared Gooden is a viable option, only $200 more when you're looking at these punt plays. So maybe we plug in Jared Gooden instead. So I think Ferreira or Gooden are your 2 real punt options. I don't think you can go wrong with either. At this point, with 86.40 left over per fighter, we're going to want to attack that mid-range as best as we can. I would probably grab Tecia Torres at that point. I might grab Borshchev. I might come up here to Buckley. I might come up here to Waters. I have 9,300 left over. I can come up here and feel good about putting Carlos Ulberg in my lineup. That's the cash game lineup for the week. That's fine with me. Since we're not stacking the main event, your scoring ceiling is a lot higher. The scoring floor is not as safe as it typically is if you have a nice stackable 5-round fight to work with, but that's where we land for the week with cash. But now that the cash game lineups are out of the way, we can build some tournament lineups, have some fun. But before we do, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that you can grab yourself a lineup optimizer on KunithMMA.com so you can build better tournament lineups, build more tournament lineups in a shorter amount of time. That's only $5.99 on the website. If you want the lineup optimizer and everything else, you can grab a total access package. What is the everything else? Let me tell you. That's going to be your official betting article for the week. That'll be your DFS strategy guide article. That'll be your data model model and projections, as well as access to the community forum. Now, if you don't have a membership on the website, but you still want something from the site, something for free, you can go on the website, put your information in, that's your name and your email. I'll email you my prop of the week. That is the prop I like at the biggest odds. We all like several props every week, but I'm going to give you one at the biggest odds. This week, the prop of the week will be plus 400. If you can guess what it is in the comments, Oscar will send you a hoodie. You don't have any hoodies to send them. Let's just build some tournament lineups. Now, there's a ton of ways you can go with your tournament lineups this week, and let me just address something here. If you want to put Robelis Despaigne in your lineup, then fucking do it. Listen, I don't need you belly aching in the comments about how upset you are that I didn't pick Robelis Despaigne to win the fight. I didn't crawl through your window at night, pick up your phone, log into your sports book, and place a bet on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. That didn't happen, all right? If you don't think that he's going to win and you like Robelis Despaigne to win, then play him, bet on him, plug him into your lineup. The dude scored 128 points last time out. Put him in there. That's fine. I'm kidding. You could say whatever you want in the comments, but I'll plug him in there. I'll give you a look. So we've got 8,200 left over per fighter. At this point, I got to come down here. I got to grab an underdog. Let me get some finishing upside. Let me put T-Rex in there at 7,300. 8,425 left over. That lets me know that I will probably find myself playing another underdog. So if we get it out of the way now, let's say we went with Billy Goff, for example. That's fine. We've got 8,766 left over per fighter. I'd probably come up here, grab Borshchev, 8,900 left over. I don't love the range that I find myself in here. If you want to grab Derrick Lewis, for example, and come up here and play somebody else, that's cool. I think if I were in this situation, I might take a shot on playing Rodrigo Nascimento, knowing that I'm going to leave some salary over no matter what. I'll plug in Mateusz Rębecki, who's been killing it lately, 112, 122, 104. I like this lineup a lot. You have Robelis Despaigne. He gives you that quick win finish upside. You've got Terrance McKinney, that round one finish upside. Same thing with Billy Goff, coming in at much lower ownership than the rest of this lineup. He's kind of your anchor. He's the guy that's pulling everything down. You've got Borshchev in there, who's got the knockout upside. You've got Rodrigo Nascimento, 5 rounds to work. Mateusz Rębecki's been killing it lately. 600 salary left over. I'm cool with this. We'll blow it up and start over. I think Carlos Ulberg is going to be somebody who people play quite a bit of this week. I think Carlos Ulberg's ceiling is a bit limited, however. Now, when he was 8,300, 8,400, that's fine. But 105 at 9,300 at high ownership, or 97 at 9,200 at high ownership, you don't like it. We'll plug him in for this lineup. Maybe not your favorite play. Somebody who I think is damn near unplayable is Sean Woodson up here at 9,100. Just not a very high scoring ceiling. He's not going to grapple at all in this fight. This fight is heavily favored to go the distance. So if he's going the distance and has scored anything like he has in these decision wins, you're not going to want to get there. So I won't plug him in. Let's plug Ribovics into this lineup at 8,900. Since I don't have Despaigne, I'll go the other way with Waldo Cortes-Acosta, 8,200 left over per salary. Let's grab Nursulton Ruziboev, 8,500 left over. I might go back to Borshchev at 8,500. And now I've got 8,600. I can grab Jake Hadley if I wanted to, who I probably won't because I really like Charles Johnson this week. The Black Beast is there, of course. I think what most people would do in this situation is they'd probably come right here to grab Derrick Lewis. If I had to adjust this a little bit, I might take Derrick Lewis out. I might take Carlos Ulberg out of there as well. When you look at these guys at 9,000 and above, I think Sean Woodson will come in at the lowest ownership, maybe Kevin Jousset as well. So you want to get a little leverage there over the field. You could play Kevin Jousset, 8,700 left over. At that point, if you really wanted to get different, you might find yourself playing somebody like Tecia Torres, even though she's not done all that well. And when I say all that well, I mean from a scoring perspective, but you've left 800 salary on the table. You're rostering one of the women's MMA fights. You don't have Despaigne in there. You don't have any side of the main event. This is super different. Another way I can see people getting chalky this week is Despaigne, Buckley, Derrick Lewis, Chase Hooper. These are just the fan favorites, right? You start your lineup like this, you're going to be chopping whatever prize you might get at the end of the night, guaranteed. If somebody's building this lineup and they're already going down this path of chalk, they might grab Terrance McKinney just to add to it. 8,900 left over per fighter. They come back up here. You can't grab Ribovics. Maybe you think about getting Trey Waters because the under is favored and you think the fight is going to finish. I don't see a whole lot of people wanting to play Jake Hadley, especially because Charles Johnson seems like one of the more popular popular underdogs of the week. We have the other side of the Borshchev fight, and then down here is going to be too cheap for people to want to touch. So if somebody is already down this path of chalk, they're probably plugging in Trey Waters, leaving 100 salary on the table. And is this a bad lineup? No, of course. Do we really know what a bad lineup is until the fights are finished? Not really. But if you wanted this lineup to be super different, I'm going to show you how. You just go the other way. Boom. There you go. You don't like that, you don't want to do that, then just do it with somebody else. We put Despaigne back in there. Excuse me, Mr. Buckley. Watch out for a second. We're going to put Ruziboev in there. He comes in at 7,500. You've left 1,300 salary on the table. Cool with that. I'll blow it up and give you one more look. Let's say we went with Nascimento. Let's say we went with Chase Hooper. Came up here to somebody like Buckley at 8,700. 8,600 left over per fighter. Come here to Goff. 9,200 left over per fighter. I'm going to grab me some Giuseppe, and I'm going to come here to Ribovics. Cool with this as well. Again, there are a lot of fun fights this week, plenty of different ways that you can go. My recommendation would be not to spread the player pool so thin this week, but even if you limit your player pool a bit more than normal, there are still ways for you to get different, especially leaving salary on the table with all these live dogs. I think you can do that. So take a chance. Don't be afraid to shake things up, do things a bit differently than you have been, because what's the worst that happens? You lose and then the UFC starts again. There will always be more slates, and hopefully if you're betting on this stuff, you work. So there will always be more money to put on more slates as well. So don't be afraid to take a chance, because sometimes if you take that chance and you get it right, then you're in a good spot. And if you follow me on Twitter, or if you look at the community tab on YouTube, you will see my Underdog fantasy slip for the week. As always, Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100 using promo code Kunith, or the link that's going to be in the description, in a pinned comment, and on those posts. So be on the lookout for that, because we're hitting this week. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I wish you the best of luck at UFC St. Louis. Let's go.